Hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. We are in our new studio. This is the Jack Parr studio in Casa Rocks. And this morning we are hosting live from Australia, our friend Sean Stinson. Sean is a sound engineer in New South Wales, as well as a skilled musician and ethno-musicologist. He's also an author and contributor to the publications, or he used to be anyway, to Counterpunch and Dissident Voice. We can talk about that in a little bit. His interests include history, international relations, and chamber music. You can find his latest writings on his blog, Cassandra's blog. We'll put a link in the show notes later. And his Substack page, Epstein Didn't Kill Himself. And he's not, when he's not in a timeout, you can find him opining his opinions, opining on his Facebook page. Okay. Welcome, Sean.
Welcome, Sean.
Oh, and he's down under, so he's a little sideways.
There we go.
Hey,
Sean.
Hey,
Can you fix
really
it?
working.
There you go.
I'll just turn myself around.
Go live. Have you hit
How is it down under?
How is it down under?
Yeah, cold. It's kind of
Cold.
wintry.
It's winter. It's getting to be winter there. We're getting into summer, although you wouldn't know it.
Yeah, it's
this
a little
morning.
chilly this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're really excited to have you on board. I know that we have a pretty strong connection. We consider you a good friend, and we've really missed you over the last 30 days on your Facebook timeout. You want to tell us what happened there?
Yeah, somebody didn't like something that I wrote about something, a violation,
Some AI robot.
whatever.
Some sort of
whatever protocols they have. Community standards on dangerous, misleading information.
Dangerous, misleading information that might make people think.
Yeah,
yeah.
Official statistics and things like that. Things you're not allowed to say.
Right. So there are a lot of people that we're connected to that are really excited to see you and hear what you have to say. What has life been like in Australia over this last year? I know some parts of Australia are more fascist than others. What's your personal experience been like?
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. It's very up and down, very arbitrary in the way they roll out the rules and guidelines. So initially it was mask wearing, police everywhere.
Yeah.
Or mask enforcers, whatever they call them, the fun police, I call them. What do they call them? COVID marshals at every, every entrance at every supermarket and whatever. And I think that kind of relaxed after a while. But Victoria's had it really hard.
Right. Yeah. Now let's remind people.
With lockdowns, I think they're just going to have lockdown there.
Right.
We'll remind people. I meant to bring an Australian map.
Remind us where you're located in Australia.
Yeah, right. So I'm kind of like on the east coast, close to Sydney, halfway down. I could draw a little map. No, I won't try and do that.
We're going to bring up. Yeah, we're going to bring up a map and show people where you're located. So Sean is 14 hours ahead of us. So it's 7 a.m. here on the East Coast, which means it's about 9 o'clock at night, his time, same day. JP is going to bring up a map right now of New South Wales, maybe?
Well, of Australia.
On the other side of the Pebble. the upside down thing.
There, that's a good one.
Yeah, this one's good too.
Okay.
All right.
So let's go ahead and show that one.
All right.
We're going to bring it in, and we're also going to want to talk in a minute about your, and I know that at one point you wrote for, or you were contributing to Counterpunch, but now you've since moved into your own, you've got your own blog. So anyway,
it ended up not showing exactly the right thing.
Right.
Let me try that again.
Yeah. So we basically just want to give people a perspective of where you are. Some of our audience are not familiar with Australia. So do you want to just go ahead and
I'm trying to find the right page here. Sorry about that. Let's see. Still getting used to this new system that we have,
Is that the right one?
Yeah, that's right. We're just a big island.
There we go.
That's a good one.
Okay.
So you're in New South Wales.
I'm the green one there.
Yeah, the green one there. Okay.
The green one.
And Victoria is below in the red.
Mm-hmm.
Now, New South Wales has the city of Sydney, and you're just south of there, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah,
okay.
just about an hour south.
Right.
And okay. So tell us, can you give us a quick thumbnail of like the different politics and the different states? We're pretty much a classic Westminster system like the US. So, we've got a nominal right-wing party and nominal left-wing party at any time, and they'll rotate, between the states. Federally, we've had a Conservative government for 8 years. Mm-hmm.
Before that, Labor government for maybe, I'm not sure actually, 13 years, another 8 years, I don't know. Victoria's got a Labor. Well, this is the down under, the Antipodes, the other side of the pebble, where everything's upside down. So we've actually got our Conservative Party call themselves Liberal. Can I? Yeah. Best way to explain this, Lenin made this classic observation back in about 1913. He said Australia has a Liberal party. No, Australia has a Conservative Party that calls itself Liberal, and a Liberal Party that calls itself Labor. And it's been that's the best way to sum it up.
I see. Okay.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that helps. That helps people identify.
So there you go. I've spoken to Lenin. That's my.
It takes an outsider.
Marxist Leninist point scored for the conversation.
There you go. All right, we'll check that off the box. Next. So Victoria is more of Victoria is the Labor Party. They seem to be the most harsh.
Victoria is a Labor state. Western Australia is also a Labor state. And they're both, surprise, the states with the cruelest COVID policy. Also, actually, Queensland is a Labor state. And, again, pretty hectic with the lockdowns and the police.
Yeah,
which is kind of interesting.
We follow a musician who lives in what city was she in?
She's in Victoria.
She's in Victoria, but she's in Melbourne. Okay, and talking about, I think she's in Melbourne. Just talking about the things that they're doing there, and how hard it is. She's very sensitive to it, of course. But like things like, they make you check in at the grocery store.
Right. You have to check in and basically like show your papers. And
which she did a video where she said she didn't do that. And the woman at the door like ran after her like, please check in. She's like, I don't need to. That's fine. Thank you.
That's fine. That's okay. It's not law, so she doesn't have to,
Right.
but people do it. And, this is all a big compliance test, which is a running theme throughout.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. I'm going to bring us back here.
So let's bring it back.
Yeah.
There we go.
So what about, are you facing any those kinds of things in New South Wales?
Where we had a snap lockdown for, there was one in Sydney. They decided to lock down the whole south and central coast, which is about an area of a distance of 300 k's, 300 kilometers, over one case for a week or something.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can you describe a snap lockdown? What is a snap lockdown? Can you expand on that a little?
It's just they suddenly announced that we're, from midnight tonight for the next week, we're going into lockdown, and these particular set of rules will apply.
Okay,
which will be just tougher regulations.
Right, and there's no warning, there's no heads up, there's it's just it's
well, they let you know, and they let you know a few hours ahead of time, that from midnight on a certain night, and it would just
at least they give you a few hours.
Go to
right.
Yeah,
okay.
a different level of fascism for the next 4 days.
Okay.
However long.
All right.
Wow.
How is your I know that you are a sound engineer. And you're self-employed, so how's that going for you in the middle of all this?
It's started to open up again. There's a few entertainment venues, smaller venues opening, and limited capacities. And that's another thing that changes. It's one of those arbitrary measures they bring in. They say, you're only allowed to have 40 inside a room, or this week you're only allowed to have 25. One person for every 4 square meters, or one person for every 2 square meters.
Yeah.
Silly things like that. So that limits whether it's viable to put shows on.
Right.
Fortunately,
there's
a few outdoor things where
Right. We still get emails from some of the venues in San Francisco, and there was one that was especially troubling to me. It was a club that we'd go to now and then to see. We saw some pretty good shows there, and had a good vibe. The room, and it would fit maybe 200 to 300 people, and they're basically only selling 50 tickets for each show, which is just insane.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they come out with their emails saying, "Oh, we had a successful show," and I know that it was only 50 people in there. I can't imagine, being a band and enjoying that kind of that kind of audience,
Yeah, when nobody's there.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's how it's been. Meanwhile, the football stadiums are full because
exactly
they're allowing that. So it is. It's very arbitrary, which is, I think, there's a psychological sort of thing there. That really the gaslighting, the hammering people, grinding people down with this arbitrary, enforcement of whatever regulations we choose to make up, whatever week.
Right. Right. So that's classic abuse. Usually children who come from abusive families, or who have abusive parents, often tell, later on in life, when they go back and sort of rehash their experiences in childhood, they say things like, the rules were arbitrary, they changed every day. And I think that every government in the world is abusing the citizens of each country with these, as you say, arbitrary and abusive tactics, which causes a person to become so anxious that they lose their sense of purpose and their sense of logic about this entire thing. and they become even addicted to these arbitrary measures, and they get Stockholm Syndrome. And I think that's what we're all being, in a way, conditioned for. Right now, we're experiencing sort of what's called, what I like to call the eye of the storm, where, I woke up one morning and all of a sudden, all of the signs were taken off of the stores, and all of the mask signs that said you had to wear a mask and social distance, they were all taken off the stores. Many of the customers were not wearing masks. There were no mask police, or as you call them, the fun police, at the front door of these stores. And there was a big festival going on downtown, and nobody was wearing masks. And it was overnight. And I think that it's this kind of, without really telling people what's going on or why, and you just suddenly go from one extreme to the other without any warning or any explanation. Even if it's a good thing, it still causes trauma and anxiety in people because they're not being communicated with effectively. And what I'd like to do is read a small portion of the article you wrote, which really spoke to me and spoke to many who we're connected to. And then we can just have a chat about it if you want to bring up
which article is that?
This is called the COVID-9/11, the final solution. And I'm going to start where with the part where you talk about Monsanto. All right. So while the $66 billion all-cash buyout of Monsanto by Bayer in September of 2016 was probably as exciting for most people as a Boys to Men reunion tour, it has still managed to garner more media attention than the recent reconstruction of the Nazi Reich, rebranded and repackaged by Klaus Schwab and his World Economic Forum pals as the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The Fourth Reich / Fourth Industrial Revolution? Fauci? Faustus? Okay, perhaps I'm being a touch playful here, but if we look around us, we see a lot of recurring motifs. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about those recurring motifs that we are seeing in, popping up in under this, guise of a health crisis. If you don't mind. Hate to put you on the spot.
Yeah. Gee, where do we even begin with that?
Well, just begin with how you feel. I mean, I know how I feel about it, and I'm seeing a rise in.
Is that I think that quote that those who don't learn from history are destined to repeat it.
Exactly.
Brings a balance. Someone had an answer to that, which was those who do learn from history are destined to pull their hair out while watching others repeat it.
Exactly.
That's what
There's
it feels
the
like.
other end of that as well,
Yeah,
of that quote that no one talks about. The reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, where I feel I'm at the moment, just watching this stuff unfold, having, read so much about it for so long, and, seen it repeated, seeing the pattern repeat historically over and over again. And, we may as well be living in 1930s Germany at the moment. And, like there's another sort of recurring meme, I think, on Facebook is, gee, now you know how when people say, how did you let it happen? How did they say to the Germans, how did you stand by and let that happen? Well, now we know,
Yeah.
Now we know the people that went along with it and why and how they were manipulated into going along with it.
Right.
Because it's very much that liberal mindset of people that think they're, trying to help, trying to do the right thing, trying to, so, my mask keeps you safe kind of nonsense, which is, unscientific claptrap. But, they're just, going along with the social distancing, going along with the sign-ins, with the the COVID app, the QR codes, just this willful compliance with fascism.
Mhm.
It's they're just hammering it down.
Right.
Well, what always confuses me, or well, doesn't confuse me, it makes me frustrated, is the people who, comply with it are saying, "Oh, I'm just being courteous. I'm just doing the right thing," and it's
Mm,
like, and not equating being courteous and doing the right thing with like capitulation and
mm,
living on your knees basically.
Right.
yeah.
I had a bus driver once tell me, because I wasn't wearing a mask. This is, before they got really fascist on the buses. He's like, well, it's not courteous. You're not being courteous. And I said, it's nothing to do with courtesy. This has nothing to do with courtesy. And everything he came up with, which were all the tropes, right? It's like, be courteous to other people, and you could be, you could be carrying something, or whatever the things were. I forget all the tropes. He just like rattled them off one at a time. And for everyone that he said, I countered with like, no, this has nothing to do with that. He thought I was being political, and if anything, he was being political,
Yeah. They made
and
it. They made
they
it
made, it's like,
political.
you're
Yeah.
just trying to make this political. And I'm like, no, actually I'm not.
Yeah.
But thank you for playing.
Right.
And yet, the problem is that I think that most people are just not standing up to these authority figures, who are really just bus drivers and grocery clerks, right? For the most part, the people who are deemed with you know enforcing these rules,
Cafe owners.
cafe owners, and it's very frustrating, because it's like
Mm,
they think that the governor, or whoever the political figure is that made these rules, um, are in charge of setting the law, and in a lot of cases they are not, and yet they believe this, and they believe the authorities, and just go along with it.
Right. Um. Let's switch gears a little bit. You mentioned prior to us going live today that you have sort of been quietly blacklisted from Counterpunch. I know you wrote some really good stuff for them in the past as a contributor. Is it just that you've moved beyond their sort of progressive narrative into a more leftist narrative?
Look, I had uh, I was going to say an altercation. I sent an email to one of the editors there, and I think this goes to a lot of what we were talking about before we went live as well.
Mm-hmm.
Katie Johnston is an Australian writer, and she'd written something and got absolutely rounded on by a lot of the people at Counterpunch for speaking this absolute heresy that we really need to reach out across the political divide, and the whether you're a liberal or a conservative or a Marxist or an anarchist or what, we need to make common cause. We've got to actually build a resistance, because this thing's coming,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and and wow, and she was shut down so quickly and just abused, and so I wrote a letter to one of the editors there and just calling him out for that, and yeah, that was that. Yeah, so I used to submit things, and I just found after that my submissions just weren't published anymore.
Okay.
Which it's just kind of expected.
Right.
But look, I'm no stranger to being what would you say, censorship.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
When I started writing. I started with a small Australian independent website, independent media website, which I won't mention. But yeah, I was a contributor there for about 5 or 6 years, I guess. And yeah, just yesterday I went to look up something I'd written about Hiroshima, just for my own notes. I wanted to find something, and just looked up the site and found that all my content there was gone and just removed from the site. So
wow.
But again, for speaking, I think I was kicked off that site at the time, around the time of Trump, when for challenging the Russia narrative,
right.
and that didn't go down well. Again, this is our Labor Party kind of supporting crowd. Yeah, and anyway, that was the end of that. But they did at least keep my content on the website. And I was surprised to find that all of that had just been taken down, scrubbed. So
yeah, I was surprised to see that there too. When you told us that they had quote unquote banned you from Counterpunch. I noticed that you hadn't contributed in a while, and I was wondering why that was, and we found that out subsequently. But
yeah, that's a good a really interesting story about Johnstone, Katie Johnstone. She's wildly popular. Speaking on that, why do you think it's so difficult for what we call the liberal class or the progressive class in the United States? You may call them something different in Australia. Why do you think it's so difficult for them to even discuss or entertain the idea of crossing party lines, coming together as individuals for, to address things like neoliberalism and things like class war? Why do you think they just shut that kind of conversation down immediately, whether they're in a publication like Counterpunch, or whether it's just a friend? Like at parties, we can't have these discussions in San Francisco with our liberal friends who are not interested in discussing class war or neoliberalism. Why do you think that is?
I honestly don't know. It's the heresy. It's the red line. You don't we're not allowed to talk about that. I guess it's the strength of the two-party construct that they built, which is a fandom type of it's a cult, I guess. It really
is a cult.
Well, the best way to describe it.
I guess it's been, because of the two-party dual system and this cult-like behavior when it comes to representative democracy. This is why it was so easy to indoctrinate people into the COVID cult. I guess. You practice enough for a couple hundred years of this, so-called representational democracy, then it should be easy to indoctrinate people into anything, including medical experiments on your autonomous body. Like it's it's pretty alarming. What else?
Well, I want to go back to your article because you called out Fauci,
yes,
and talked about the and something we've talked about, and one of our guests recently, one of our previous guests, she just released an article about the AIDS and COVID comparison, and you got
fantastic.
into that. Yeah, you got into that a little bit. Who's that? Rosemary Frey.
Rosemary Frey, who we had on.
I haven't seen that. I've got to check that out.
Yeah.
Yes. She recently did this great piece about, and I think a lot of us, I grew up in San Francisco in the 1980s, and I remember seeing the protest movement against Fauci in the gay community, seeing it with my own two eyes as a child. Of course, my parents are conservative and were really protective of me, and I was told to avert my eyes. But I kind of grew up with this understanding that there was, a big gay community, especially in the San Francisco area, that were fighting against AZT and Fauci. So why don't you talk about that? because you did a really
you covered that in your article.
Bring up the article again.
Yeah. Well, he was the guy, wasn't he? He was the what I call him, the AIDS czar in the 80s, leading that narrative, that particular class war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't really know what to say. What to say other than what I've written there.
Well, yeah, no, that's cool. We, and I was living in San Francisco at the time too, and my girlfriend at the time lived in the Castro, so I was in that, in and around that community, and I remember, all the controversy around AZT, and I also remember, other sort of narratives going on around there that it was a man-made disease, and there were all these different things that were you heard on alternative media. Some of it really paranoid, and some of it made sense. It was really hard to get any sort of handle on what was actually going on if you just paid attention to the mainstream media. And I think even a lot of the folks in the gay community really weren't as aware of what was going on. And I think what I liked about your article was you were talking about Freddie Mercury.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's such a good point. Because right before.
Well, let him talk about it.
Okay.
You guys go ahead. I don't have any notes or anything fresh in my head.
Oh,
okay.
We're sorry if we put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Well, when you brought him up in the article, it brought to mind the fact that just before COVID, a biopic came out, like a big movie about him came out.
Yeah, right.
It was just before COVID, and with these kinds of things,
they're always signaling out, right?
Always a signal. There's always some kind of precursor to a big event.
Right. They didn't do a Bowie movie. They didn't do a movie about T-Rex. They did a movie about Queen. Right.
Yeah, before. Isn't that something? I hadn't made the connection, but yeah. Yeah, and they like to announce the plans.
Yeah, and I just what happened to Freddie Mercury, I think that's why you brought it up. It is like a great illustration of what happened at that time, where he was a healthy individual, but because he was gay, his doctor always had him check in, and test, right, and those tests were just as flawed as the tests now for COVID. I remember I actually took a test because, when you're living in a place like San Francisco and you are, a young adult, and, you do what young adults do, mine always, came up, negative. So I never had to worry about it. But, I think that like now, these tests,
doesn't exist.
Well, these tests, though, are skewed so that if you're in a particular demographic, you will come up with a positive or negative test more often, depending on who you are and where you come from.
And you're
I think definitely, yeah.
And so when Freddie Mercury came up positive, it was like, oh my God, Freddie Mercury has AIDS, and it was like he didn't. That they put him on the drugs anyway, which basically killed him.
This is the same playbook, right, Sean? I mean,
that's your classic asymptomatic carrier that they're trying to pull over our heads now, which is is unscientific. If you go back to I think the piece I wrote before last on both the blog and on the Substack was a bunch of medical professionals, literally at the top of their field, talking about just debunking the myths around it, and the idea that you can be contagious without being sick is crazy. It's just not a thing.
Right. So this is this idea. So like you wrote on the blog piece here, COVID 9/11, trust the science.
That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. There, this magical thinking idea of asymptomatic carrier, this idea that whether they are, HIV tests or SARS-CoV-2 tests, whatever they are, that you're gonna be come up positive and then have a potentiality for getting a disease. It's all just
Or being infectious or contagious, when the medical science says if you have enough viral load to be contagious, then you are sick and you're at home in bed because you know about it.
exactly
Right.
Your immune
exactly
system's fully cranked, and you're symptomatic.
right.
And if you're not symptomatic, then you're not sick, and
So
you're not
now
going to
people
infect
are,
anybody else.
yeah,
And yeah, so the current, the current way of thinking flies in the face of what we've, known for, forever.
right.
Forever.
And yet people have forgotten that, when you're not sick, you're not sick.
And it's a big money making scam. I know in San Francisco, the fake AIDS crisis or the fake HIV crisis that got everybody, even straight males who were not active in any of the lifestyle choices that were being targeted, were running out to get tested. Just like at 9/11, when you had accountants that were signing up to join the military right after 9/11. People who have no business, getting tested or joining the military or doing these crazy things. So this is all first of all, it's a big anxiety making scheme to get you to capitulate to the state for some reason. The more people that test, whether it's for taking an HIV test or taking a COVID test, it then generates a profit to the medical, institutions or the facilities that are generating these tests, so they get their paycheck. This is also a class war. I mean, there's so many different ways we can look at this.
There are so many angles to it, and it is a class war, and the ruling class, I keep coming back to this, is not a monolith. They're at each other's throats.
Exactly.
So there are many aspects within that, and they might go and powwow at Davos and sit and work out what kind of deal they can work out between themselves over who's going to get what cut. But there are many players and many aspects, and the financial aspects of it, the farmer, who are just making billions of all funded by government, all funded by the taxpayer, straight into the pockets of the pharma companies. Then you've got the whole shut down the economy. I don't like to talk about the middle class, but I don't like to use the term explicitly. But yeah, just put small business out of business, and the stats on the billionaires, the three of them, Gates, Bezos, the other guy, Amazon guy.
That's
Bezos. Yeah, that's Bezos.
He's now a trillionaire.
Oh, sorry, and Elon Musk, right? So
Elon Musk,
the three richest guys in the world have added, God knows, like 20% to their fortunes over the last 12 months. It's just extraordinary.
Nice. Right.
Which is a direct result of putting small business out of business. And which is why we're all unemployed and struggling. It's just incredible.
Right.
So, and these are your Davos people. These are the people that sit around the tables and make the deals.
Yeah, they're scheming.
Write the playbook. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. It's not just pharma, but it certainly is.
Yeah.
To an extent.
When you said, it's interesting that you said, when we talk about the ruling class, they're not a monolith, and it's something that Julie and I talk about every once in a while, and I bring up a sort of an analogy of, like, think of it as like, we're living all in one big giant corporation, and there are different factions within the corporation at the top that are fighting for, dominance of influence all the time. and like, you wonder why shows like the Game of Thrones were so popular. Well, I think that's a good way of, looking at,
I didn't watch it. I'm proud
I
to
never did
say.
either.
We never watched it.
I never watched it either, but
Boy, we heard about it a lot.
yeah, its influence certainly,
Yeah.
spills over, right? And I think that, there's something to that, again, we talk about media and predictive programming. I don't even think it falls into that category as much as it's a reflection of, what's going on in our world, and kind of giving us a clue as to what actually is going on up there.
Yeah. Let's talk about class for a minute. And I'll just give you a personal example. When we first moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania 3 years ago from San Francisco, when we first moved here, we noticed that there were no homeless people. There was nobody unhoused on the street like we would see in San Francisco.
Even though this is a fairly, poor community in general.
Right. I don't know if they existed and we just never saw them, but we noticed, like, we scoured the neighborhoods. We were checking out our new digs, our new city. This was before COVID and everything. So we know, and that's one thing that was a repeating narrative, with us personally, which is, wow, there's nobody unhoused. Now there is.
Yeah.
Now they're there. They're on the streets. They're in the tents. They're sleeping on the sidewalks. Do you notice that shift and that change in your area at all? Have you seen
I haven't
it?
really seen a lot of it because we're sort of, more, I don't know what you'd call it, more kind of a big country town, I guess, kind of here.
Okay.
So it's a bit more spread out. I think we're been sheltered a lot. It's kind of surreal seeing the whole thing play out, because you kind of feel like we're in a bit of a bubble here. I don't know if it's just me personally or if it's the general vibe. I know, a lot of people are worse off or some people are a lot worse off than others, but yeah.
Okay. So where you live is probably similar to, like, maybe some of the outer lying areas that are outside of the cities, where things are a little more relaxed. You still have good working class. People aren't wearing the mask. People they're still able to generate an income. They have a means of production, and so there isn't a lot of the class war that you see going on in the cities, especially. So that's good. I mean, that's actually nice to hear. Anybody who can get away from this obvious oppression right in front of your face or right outside your front door is, I'm glad to hear it, because it'll keep you sane. But that's interesting. You're, like we brought up before, the COVID 9/11 Trust the Science article that you wrote, and it's a really great article. You mentioned John Ioannidis, the professor of epidemiology at Stanford.
Yeah.
We have this really strange disconnect with people who really refuse to look at the science, which I find baffling.
The actual science, the real as
science,
opposed to your government apparatchiks and whatever media they have in their pockets constantly, but,
Yeah.
and pharma reps, like whoever paid shills, bureaucrats. These are the people that we're listening to. We're not listening to actual. I'm yet to hear an actual scientist, a qualified doctor or medic, or let alone epidemiologist or anyone of that sort of caliber and qualification get up and stand by what the media and the government are saying and defend it.
Right.
It's just it's not there. You're hearing it's from
you're hearing more of the government shills who are claiming to be
spin
doctors and scientists,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And something somebody brought up to me, or brought to our attention recently was, that it's always qualified as the science. I heard you say that, but it's like, science as opposed to the science, and in quotation marks. And
Yeah.
and it's something, a small piece that I did recently where, I talked about how science has been treated like a religion, believing in the science,
Believe
whereas
exactly. Yeah.
you don't need to believe in science, because science
Yeah.
isn't something that's, it's either
No,
one or the other.
science is a method of inquiry.
Exactly.
That's what we were taught.
Right.
And yeah.
And I used to get I used to get an email from a science group in Boston, out of Harvard, I think it was. And they always referred to the scientists that they were talking about as investigators, and I always liked that. That was a good term, because they were investigating phenomena, or a hypothesis, or something, whatever it may be. So it was a method of investigation, as opposed to burning incense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Saying a prayer and yeah, I always imagine them in white lab coats for some reason. I think of them as the high priest of the current climate time.
Yeah.
Well, even the white lab coat was like brought about by, I think it was an initiative by Bernays,
Yeah. Right. Okay.
in the 20s or 30s, who had doctors appear in white coats,
In the ad
you know,
campaign.
and and it just kind of stuck.
Right. It's actually not a.
There's no tradition
There's
there other than that.
like, it's not part of the. It's a propaganda means. So
Okay, that's awesome. I didn't know that. That's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Well, let's we're looking at your background. You've got guitars back there, you've got lots of books and records. Obviously, you're a musical person, and we have a great love of music, and we noodle, on the guitar ourselves sometimes, and we have instruments at home. It helps us get through this really bizarre time that we're in. And tell us how your. I think that, and that's one of the things that really actually drew me to you uh, on social media, is the fact that you would play. Um, has your, obviously, I'm going to assume that the music has been a great benefit for you to express and feel better about the situation that we're all in. Are you frozen? Oh, looks like you're frozen. Okay, looks like he's frozen.
Okay. Let me try something here.
So, okay, here we go. Oh, okay. Try it again. Okay, now let's bring him on.
All right, there you are.
You're back.
Looks like we lost your connection.
You are again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just when we start talking about music and how it, ameliorates the pain.
Yeah.
Tell us how your artistic endeavors and your musical talents and your love of music has really, helped you get through, because I enjoy what you play.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I had a fall last year, and I snapped my wrist, 180'd my wrist, and did some nerve damage. So mainly, yeah, it's been a process of getting movement back in my wrist again, and the doctors kind of said, you're a musician, have that. That's really good. You'll get a really good outcome if you try and play. And yeah, it was heartbreaking at first, because not being able to at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, that took a lot of work to get the fingers and the working.
Sure.
And I guess it's kind of, yeah. I go through phases of playing every day and then not playing for months at a time. And it's been kind of a thing I've done for rehabilitation, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any kind of specific therapy that you used to help you, get movement back into your hand and fingers?
Yeah, look, it's quite mad actually. It's mostly cognitive stuff and image recognition because the nerve was damaged.
Right.
I basically lost grey matter, so the lights up here blinked out because they couldn't see the hand that they needed to control anymore.
Wow.
And so the injury, the injury had more or less healed in the normal way, but getting this up here to recognise it and talk to the hand again took quite a bit of training. Wow. And a lot of that therapy was with flashcards and pictures and mirrors and images, which is quite interesting.
Wow, that is actually very fascinating. I mean, I knew that there was an injury. I remember you posting about that and going, what's going on, but this actually gives it more. It defines it a little better for me because I wasn't sure exactly what was going on. And
my physiotherapist had a great sense. I don't know, an evil sense of humor. I'd say because one of the things that one of the exercises was to put a mirror on the table and basically look at you, because it was my left hand that was injured. Look at the right hand and look at it in the mirror, so your brain thinks it's seeing the left, and then we'll try and do the things that move the fingers in the way that they can't move and stimulate them and whatever. And he said, and he brought something down, something quite heavy, and slammed it down like a book on the table. Bang. Wow. And it was. I actually felt it in the other hand.
Wow.
Quite bizarre.
That is bizarre. That is really interesting.
With a hammer.
Wow.
Yeah, fun stuff. Anyway,
that was Dr. Gregory House.
It's a
sorry
TV commercial. Hugh Laurie played him. You know who he is, the actor. So have you? I mean, did you in the past? Were you performing? Because I know that you're a sound engineer. And usually, in my experience, sound engineers, they work at a club or they work at the gigs, but then they also, are performing and they're in bands. Was that the same?
Yeah, that's indicated together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
cool.
yeah.
So are you getting the band back together, so to speak?
Getting the band back together. Well, that's a line from the Blues Brothers, isn't it?
The Blues Brothers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been no talk of getting the band back together. But, maybe a solo career.
Have you, to go back to the psychological warfare that's being waged on us all right now, have you found in your area what we have found with our community, whether it's our, former connections in San Francisco or even the current connections we have here in Pittsburgh? Have you found people are kind of pulling away from your line of thought regarding your feelings?
Oh,
about
hell yeah. Yeah, I lose friends every day.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, normally, virtual friends, but, real, people, I've personal friends who I now only sort of see through Facebook or social media, just, disappearing.
Sure.
So, it's kind of real.
I suppose this was the plan all along, right?
Oh, divide and rule.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's basically what it comes to.
Right. It's it's really strange. I mean, but it's kind of inevitable. So I'm at the position where, early on I adopted this attitude of, letting them go, and not trying to reach them, and not trying to teach them.
Well, we went through that before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We went through a big shedding, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
of family and friends for various reasons.
Various, yeah.
And it was almost like, we experienced COVID before it happened. And
Right.
so when it did happen, even though it was, we were just as shocked as everyone else, we haven't been experiencing some of the same things that, people have been experiencing with, losing friends and things
Losing
of that,
family.
because
Yeah.
we just didn't have any social ties to begin with, at the beginning of all
Mhm.
that. But, we've been watching
Yeah.
it and we've been fielding it, we've been talking to people. Um, and I guess that goes back to the band thing. It's like, well, I guess we're not going to be getting the band back together because, I imagine that plays a lot. That has a lot to do with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. I
So,
mean, we know that like what you had said earlier on, when you supported John Stone's article about, stop with this representational party line bullshit, and let's all come together, as in
well,
unity.
find the things we agree on at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rest can wait. We sort out the details later.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's how I feel as well. But unfortunately, there are people who don't, who forget that as they themselves are encouraging, the very thing that we all want, which is for all of us to come together, and do away with our differences, especially political differences. You're forgetting, not you, but a lot of people out there forget that the people who are coming together, they have their own baggage, they have their own bullshit, they have their own problems, and they're coming as human beings. And human beings are mean and messy and offensive, and may not, and maybe like standoffish, and not like, your culture or where you come from, or the way you dress or whatever. And none of these really shallow differences among us are put aside. You lead with that. It's I've been attacked for being blonde. So, and been
How dare you,
blocked.
Julie? How dare you be blonde?
And been blocked for being blonde, or painting my nails or whatever. And that's ridiculous. And I think that people are forgetting, the bigger picture is, yes, we all need to put aside our differences and come together. But do they really understand what that means? That means you're going to have to accept me, and I'm going to have to accept you,
Mm.
and all this, for all of our flaws and all of our baggage and all of our history with whatever shaped us into the people we are. So, that's probably a conversation for our next guest, who's a psychologist. But I I feel for people, because I know every single person we talk to, and I know you fall into this category as well, and we do as well. Every single person that we talk to has lost friendships, and family ties are strained and cracked, and there's this real bifurcation simply because of your worldview, you know?
Sean, I had a question about, so where you live currently, is it an area that you grew up in?
No, I kind of come from the country, which
Yeah.
is like over the hills, out that way a bit. Yeah, out
Yeah.
west, a little country town where I grew up. So
Mhm.
I've been here since about 30 years, I guess, down
Yeah.
on the coast.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of nice little spot between the mountains and the sea. It's got its own kind of gravity about it. I think it just keeps you here. It's a nice spot.
Well, we're coastal people, but now we're living very inland. The closest water we have is like our rivers.
Yeah.
So we miss the ocean. Are you close to the ocean?
Yeah, quite
Wow.
close.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, how lucky. I know I miss the ocean. I miss the shore, the sea. That's a big, well, that's who I am. I grew up in California. So it was always, I always had access to it, and now I don't, and I'm feeling it,
Yeah. Are they doing, like we've been hearing in England and Ireland, where they've been keeping people off the beach, even in San Francisco to some degree. Have you been seeing that where you are?
They did try it. Like they tried it initially last year, I guess. And I mean, you can only keep that up for so long. I think they know they have to dial it back after a while, because they were definitely saying people couldn't go to the beach, and there's no logic in that.
No.
There's no common sense, let alone medical science or evidence, in that. Like even the mask wearing outdoors is ridiculous. Which I know. I just looked up actually on the government website before I came on that Victoria's just moved from, I don't know what stage of lockdown they've extended their state of emergency pretty much indefinitely, and they've come out of like the most severe lockdown into the next tier, but they're still demanding that you wear a mask outside. So wow. I think last week you were allowed to travel within 5 kilometres of your house, and this week it's 25. But it's back to that arbitrary thing again. And it's interesting that they've sort of chosen Victoria to lead this here, because it's it's hard to. I mean, it's probably geographically it's probably the smallest state to contain. The borders are fairly porous here, and we're used to free movement, obviously. There's a lot of travel between the states, but they've really, it's almost like, they've chosen to make an example of Victoria. And like I said before, they've got the Labor government there, which is, for some reason, the progressive governments are really going along with this, more so than the conservative ones. Right. Which is not the association most people have with fascism in its sort of classical form. But
right. Yeah, Victoria is very small.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this has to do with the smart technology and smart city technology that we're seeing kind of roll out in smaller areas, like smaller cities, like smaller compact cities like San Francisco, or definitely New Zealand, countries and states and cities that are a little smaller and easier to control and are what I call neoliberal, are adopting the smart technology for surveillance. Public transportation is a big part of this, which is ironic because the train cars, which took people to the concentration camps, were also a big part of the culling of the population. So I noticed that public transportation,
there's one of those recurring motifs.
Yeah, isn't that strange? Like, we have friends or former friends that sit on the board of the public transportation agency in San Francisco, and they just announced the other day that they're stopping all of the Bay Area, which is San Francisco and then all the surrounding area. They're stopping all of the transit systems at 10 p.m. That's basically how you get your curfews. Is you don't have somebody pounding down your door with a gun at their hip saying you have a curfew at 10 p.m. and you don't have jackbooted thugs marching up and down your street. It comes through your policymakers who run your train systems and run your bus systems. It's going to be done it's what I call like soft fascism, or a soft curfew. It's a curfew nonetheless, but you don't feel really threatened by it. You're like, oh, well, I guess I just have to figure out a different way to get home if I'm going to be at the club till midnight. I don't know if you experience anything like that where you are, You might have a car, so we don't. So we're relying 100% on public trans. And if it's not working, it's really challenging for us. It's another indication of class war, in my opinion. So, how about you? Do you have a
Definitely.
car?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a car person, so
Good.
yeah, don't have to rely on the public transport, and I'm not sure what it's been like in the bigger cities, whether they've
Yeah.
had those type of curfews or not, to be honest.
That's good.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
But
good.
yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to say something else?
Oh, just that the cities are also amping up bicycle infrastructure, and and I'm a cyclist. I get around by bike most of the time. Getting from here to downtown is a little challenging, just because of the infrastructure and lack thereof.
It's dangerous.
But from where we live to downtown Pittsburgh, but by bus it's easy, right? So but I've noticed that in the big cities, and these are part of the the UN sustainable development goals, and but along with those goals, I think that so we've got this on one hand, they're taking away access to public transit, even though they're pushing public transit on people, and it looks like they're going to start trying to get people out of their cars in more ways than one. So it's this weird push-pull thing, and I think it goes back to the psychological abuse, but also with the bike lanes and the like they're opening up the streets in San Francisco, closing it off to cars, so pedestrians and cyclists can use those streets. I think it's about surveillance as much as anything else.
Right. So areas where you live are not going to see that that shift into the smart infrastructure, but Victoria will, because it's already
In Sydney.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
So then again, it goes into politics. I think it goes into whether you are a like in San Francisco, it's a liberal mayor. But in Florida, it's a Republican governor. So then it is political. Then it does go into politics. It depends on whether that politician is backed by Silicon Valley and their funding and their campaigns have been funded by big tech, or whether their campaigns have been funded by big oil. It feels like it's that simple sometimes. What do you think? I mean, coming from your perspective.
Yeah, well, again, they're all kind of in it together, making deals, making background deals as well. So you look at didn't Rockefeller divest from oil, or the family divest from oil 10 years ago?
Right.
Or begin to.
So that's the whole
and those guys. You look at the links then between oil and petrochemicals and your pharma companies that very much cross over. I think they've got it all worked out. Where they want us, and they're just they're nudging us there. But I also think it's coming to a head. It's becoming a lot more rapid with this latest. I don't even know what you call this scam theatre piece. This thing that we're all in at the moment.
It does feel like theater. Yeah, it is
I've
a
been
script.
calling it.
Yeah.
I've been calling it COVID 9/11 since it started, more or less. So I'm sure there are other people that have used that terminology, but that's just something that I decided on when I started writing, like last year, pretty much straight into it.
Interesting. I haven't heard that much.
Saw basically what was happening.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't heard it.
For me, the parallel with
yeah. I heard COVID 1984.
The parallel with 9/11. Yeah. Well, I just saw it as a terror campaign, and It's bioterrorism. Sure, there's that aspect of it, but mainly just amping up the fear, and it's all manufactured hysteria out of, there's arguments whether it's any more virulent than a normal seasonal flu.
Right.
Yes.
The death toll, there is no, last year the all-cause morbidity for 2020 was the 9th since 2000, which is just slightly below average. So there weren't any excess deaths, any more deaths than in any normal year. So where is your deadly pandemic? By definition, it just puts a lie to it. So this whole thing has been a theatre piece that's been in the same way that they use the theatre, the spectacle of 9/11, regardless of what your take on that is, whether you think planes hit the buildings or not, or the fact is that we know Saddam didn't do it, and we went and invaded Iraq anyway. We know that who was, I can't remember the guy. It was Osama bin Laden, all over the news. Whatever your take on that is, it's
a
just
joke.
obvious that was it was a fear campaign that was a manufactured piece of theatre that was used to take, to launch a war that we're still in now, 20-year war of terror, and the death toll is just incredible, and millions of people. So, and they're doing it again. Here we are.
Exactly, they're doing it again. It's nice
script.
to hear. Same trip. It's really good to hear you speak it that way and put it so simply, and coordinate the the fear campaign from 9/11, and balance it against the fear campaign that we're experiencing right now. That's kind of where that is exactly where my mind went at the very beginning of this as well.
I think it was so obvious to a lot of us.
Well, anybody who's capable of thought, there are plenty of people we know that shockingly still believe that brown people threw planes into our buildings or something. They actually really do believe that. And
with a guy in a cave with a cell phone.
Somehow directed the most sophisticated planned attack in history, or on American soil, or something like that. But I think more people really do need to make that connection the way you just did. Fear is a remarkable tool to fear can even change the way that you change your health. It can change your body. It's very powerful. It's a very effective tool. Fear. It can manipulate a person psychologically. It can change a person's physical appearance and health status. It's amazing. I see evidence of fear and anxiety take all around me. In the neighborhood I live in, I see people who have their bodies have changed shape because they've been traumatized by the state their whole lives, and it's inherited. It started with their grandparents and on into their parents. I think it depends on what part of the country you're in. We live in a part of the country that's considered like the Rust Belt.
Yeah, we're on the edges of the Rust Belt. So Pittsburgh used to be a big steel town. There's still a few mills around, but
once again, you get into this kind of class analysis, where it feels that those whose opportunities have been taken away from them over the years have developed these sort of trauma bonding behavioral traits where the state has exercised all of this power and control over their lives. It's really devastating to see.
Well,
and
the state and the corporations that they work for too.
The state and the
Yeah.
corporations that have now occupied. So, like some broadcasters have said, we're living in a government of occupation. Do you feel that like in
Absolutely.
any
Yeah,
tangible way?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, corporate capture, completely.
Yeah.
They even, the corporates, even write the laws. Like they've got their guys, and the politicians sign off on them. That's how it works. That's how the game's played.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how much money has to change hands in order for that to happen, or if the politicians just know their place. But that's the system.
Well, I think
Yeah,
there's also the underwriting of the media
probably
as well.
the huge on those. Yeah, where the media sits in that. Well, the media, so you could argue about that meme of the chessboard and the chess pieces laid out, and here's the corporations, here's the government, here's the media, and here's the police. I don't know if you've seen that one, but yeah,
Yes.
the media, of course, are corporate. They're driven by they definitely don't work for the government.
Yeah.
They're tied up directly in the corporate
Right.
side of it.
Yeah.
I think it's been like this for years, but we've been living under this, illusion, and they finally pulled away the
curtain.
the curtain, and they exposed
Yeah,
it.
that's Zappa reference, the curtain at the back of the theatre. Like
Right.
I can't remember the quote, but yeah.
Yeah. So I
One
mean,
day they're gonna pull it.
and some of us have been calling out the corporate capture of our governments for years, and and now we're seeing evidence of it through COVID 9/11. And it's and more people are, I do want to be I don't want to be a Debbie Downer over here. More and more people certainly are starting to look at this practically and see the reality of what's going on, which is good. The less people that are playing fealty to these, policies, the better, right? So, resisting.
Yeah, I think people are, like the fact that they're pushing the vaccination thing so hard. We allowed to talk about that? I don't know. We might get taken off the internet if we mention that word.
We'll see.
We'll see. We'll find out.
Yeah, yeah. The fact that they're pushing it, I think, suggests that there is a lot more resistance than they're letting on to it.
I agree.
And that's the impression I get, just generally.
Yeah.
I
think
agree.
Yeah.
I think when you have to have lotteries and free ice cream cones and free donuts, I'm pretty sure you've lost your audience
Yeah.
when you have to promise ice
The
cream
level
cones.
of coercion is just insane.
Yeah,
Absolutely insane.
yeah,
And for God's sake, it's Big Pharma. These are the same corporations that told us thalidomide was safe for nursing mothers.
exactly, exactly.
People must know.
Right.
Whether there's I don't know. I don't know how many people are actually just in a trance, and to what extent is that cognitive dissonance where you know but you don't want to know.
Right. Yeah. It's
Uncomfortable awkwardness of holding those two contradicting beliefs that this isn't right, but I'm going to do it anyway because
right.
whatever.
We see that so much now, more than ever.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, it's pretty cognitive dissonance, and like you said, holding the two opposing beliefs in your brain. It's everywhere. Nothing makes sense. Let's take a look at some of the comments. We actually do have some comments that we'd like to read.
Live Alive. Hi, Live Alive.
Wow.
We're surprised you're watching.
Awake.
You're
so
awake.
Live Alive lives on the west coast of the United States, which means it's like about 5:30 in the morning for her. And we started about 90 minutes ago. Yeah. So, but she said mirror therapy. So she's going back to what you were talking about, the therapy for your injury. She said mirror therapy is often used for rehab in cases of neurological damage and also with amputees that have phantom pain, and it can be very effective. So she has a background in this field.
Right. We know that she's a physical therapist.
Right. So Age of Reason says that the show setting looks great and the sound is great. Thank you for that. Where we have this new
Jack Parr
studio going on here. So let's see. So somebody by the name of Ms. Tree says that another platform posted a video of a succession planner revealing the oil industry is looking to replace about 50% of their staff. So she intimates the Jiggy Jagger likely won't be with us. What is that a Australian term? What's Jiggy Jagger?
I don't know.
What does that mean? What else do we have?
I've never heard it. Sorry.
Somebody's from Texas. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning from Texas. And oops, wrong to hello. Okay. Yeah, so those are some comments that we got. Very good.
Yeah. We were talking about having you play some music. If you'd like to, we can close out the show.
Yes. Yeah, we would love to hear you play.
Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome.
I'd be probably more at home than talking. It's this is not something I do.
Yeah.
Talk a lot. Well, I talk a lot, but not in a live conferencing sort of setting, as you might be able to tell.
That's okay.
I feel like I've made a complete shambles of it. But
maybe no, this is good.
No,
am I coming through?
Yeah, you're coming through.
Yes.
All right. Do we say goodbye now, or do we?
No, we'll just
we'll have you play, and then when you feel like stopping, we'll come back and
we'll finish up.
All right, this is a little song by an Aussie guy I'm a big fan of, who died a couple of years ago, Chris Wilson. It goes like this. If I can remember how to play it. And get my fingers to work. The clock radio on the mantle says 2:45. I'm asleep on the beanbag in front of the color crawl across the floor. I chopped out just one more small line. The face in the mirror tells me I'm doing fine. There's a place in the back of my mind where we used to be. Like ghosts round the maple dance through my memory. I went looking for answers, and I found that my heart had declined. The face in the mirror tells me I'm doing fine. the things that we do and deny. Strangers can be lovers, your friends and not your friends. We do what we can to survive. Relief from the weight of your spine, I've been hoping to find. The face in the mirror tells me I'm doing fine. Relief from the weight of your smile, I've been hoping to find. The face in the mirror tells me I'm doing fine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great.
I have actually, I know that song. I've heard that song before. It's been a while since I've heard it. Thank you for performing it. Thank you so much.
We just looked up Christopher Wilson too.
Yeah,
So
so-
I didn't know about him. So yeah.
Yeah, but I've heard that song before. And beautifully done. Thank you so much. It's very touching.
I didn't know he was a mad socialist recently. Something.
You didn't know what? What did you say?
We missed what you said
What
there.
did you just say?
I didn't know he was a mad socialist until recently.
Oh, really?
Something I looked up myself.
Wow.
Which is good to know.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Comrade.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Hey, and we didn't talk about politics. That's good.
I know.
Well, next time,
We'll do another time. Yeah.
we would love to have you on again.
Specifically Marxism. Yeah,
Right. Well, we did bring up the red jellies today, so.
Right. Yeah.
And I wore my red shirt.
Yep. Yeah. No, it was a really good it's a good thing to talk to you in person because we consider you a friend and we would love to have you come back and share more about, your position and just this was kind of a warm up. So I hope that you do come back.
That's good. Yeah, I feel warmed up now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I hope you come back and we want to thank you again for coming on board, and please people go to his website. Do you want to tell us where people can find you on your various social media accounts and websites?
Yeah, the one to watch is probably Substack. It's where I do most of my writing now, and the blog's called, you said before, Epstein Didn't Kill Himself.
Yeah,
right. It's a great name.
I might change that at some point, but
it's a great name.
Yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time. But yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's where I'm writing.
Okay. Well,
it's been great to see you, to be with you in your new studio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fun.
Yeah, thanks. We'll put those links in our show notes after we go off the air, and so people can find you at those locations. And both places. I think you post to both places simultaneously, right?
Yeah, for the moment, I think the Blogspot being a Google service, I think is likely to go down at any time without warning. So
yeah,
I thought I'd try and spread it around a bit, and get on a few other platforms.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up. So thank you for coming on to Pullquote.
Yes, and we'll have you back. And so thank you everyone for joining, and for those of you who got up so early to join us, and for those of you who didn't, you can go back and watch the repeat episode, or it'll stay on our channels. So
all right, well, we'll see you again, Sean.
Right. We'll see you in just a moment.
In just
Sean.
a moment, yeah. We're going to wrap up wrap up this episode of Pullquote. Hang on just a second.
Okay.
So here comes the ticker. Yes. And the pitch. So we are working artists, and this is what we do for a living. And we're bringing other artists and other voices out there in the resistance to you. And what we need from you is a little support. If you could give us a little bit of money, we know that we get your support in other ways, and we appreciate that very much. If you'd like to, you can become a patron by going to patreon.com/bookofhours. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a patron and help us continue the work that we're doing. You can also go to paypal.me/bookofhours, and you can give us a one-time donation. And if you do that, then we can send you the links to some of the content that are available to our patrons and supporters only. So this is premium content that is available to people who are patrons. Also, you could go to rockfin.com/bookofhours. You join the Rockfin for free, but then you can also become a member of the premium content. So you pay $9.99 a month. You have access to our premium content, as well as to all the content that's premium to the guests or the content producers on Rockfin. You can also give us tips at Rockfin too, which is awesome. And we are currently streaming to Rockfin. So hello to those Rockfin viewers out there. Anything else?
No, that's it. We just want to thank our patrons for maintaining your support of our work. There is more stuff that is in the pike right now. We're working on a few different video essays, one of which is the Green New Deal. We have recently released another cartoon with Tory Evening Star to talk about the Amazon Spy Network. So you can find that on our YouTube channel. It was, of course, offered to our patrons first. I definitely want to acknowledge the patrons that we do have. You really do inspire us. I love receiving your emails and your comments, your ideas, your suggestions. That I may not have an opportunity to get back to you right away, but I do hear you, and we definitely take every suggestion and every subject matter that you bring to us. We definitely review it and look at it. So we are so thankful that we have engaged patrons. That's, and we've formed really good friendships with these people, and we love the fact that you support our work. And we're so grateful for that. Yes. So I think this wraps it up. We will be going live again on Saturday. Coming Saturday.
That's right. Yeah. So this Saturday, we've got a special bookmark coming up, and this will be our solstice fundraiser. We'll be pulling runes. So we'll be reading runes because it is the summer solstice after all. And we'll be talking about some other things as well that are currently going on. It's going to be a 2-hour program. So tune in.
Join us for that as well.
Yeah.
And we'll send out a reminder to all the platforms regarding that.
Yeah.
Thank you again for joining us so early this morning, for those of you who did. And we will see you on Saturday.
All right. Great. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Book of Hours are artists here to empower and embolden your response to the constant negative sound bites that attack your news and social media feeds. In order to continue making the video essays and art you've come to enjoy, we need your support. Make a one-time donation or become a patron. Thank you.